They say men like Graham Whitmore only marry women who are worthy, meaning those with the same bloodline, the same bank account, the same family crest, engraved at Southern elite clubs. But that night, under the dim chandeliers of Caledonia Hall's grand ballroom, a minor mishap at the silent auction table would shift the axis of an entire legacy. He saw her not with the eyes of a businessman, not as the heir to a multinational empire, but with the gaze of a drowning man who had just spotted shore. Caledonia Hall, the lavish gem by the Savannah River, donned all the splendor of a southern queen stepping out of memory. Evening gowns flowed like Belle Epoque waves, tuxedo bows perfectly cinched, and champagne toasts carried the scent of power, pretense, and ambition. Among the sea of people swimming in rehearsed conversations from gala seasons past, Graham Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Shipping, stood still, like a statue frozen in gold-plated loneliness. He didn't want to be there, but his absence would be deemed an insult as the fifth-generation pride of a founding family that built its fortune on maritime transport and financed a state senator's campaign. He loathed the counterfeit symphonies coming from the cello, the scrutinizing eyes of dignified socialites, and, even more, the performative charity auctions that did more for vanity than for any real cause. Until he saw her. She stood quietly in a corner by the auction table displaying oil paintings. No plunging necklines, classic pearls, or gestures taught at expensive boarding schools. She wore a simple navy dress, raw cotton with a slight crease at the waist, and her left hand still bore faint traces of pastel pink remnants of a rushed day in the studio. She gazed down at a painting with no bid yet placed, lips slightly pursed as if speaking silently to the dried brushstrokes. Graham couldn't look away. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She didn't glance at the parade of designer handbags hanging from the arms of the wealthy. She didn't fake a laugh or try to charm the VIP donors seated in the front row. In a world where everyone screamed for attention, she was quiet, and that very silence made her the center of everything. Alana Brooks didn't belong here, and she knew that better than anyone. She hadn't come to dream of a life transformed. She came because Professor Whitaker, her mentor at the Savannah Institute of Art, had pressured her to accept the invitation. A major collector wants to see your work. They said it could change your career trajectory, he whispered, as if passing on a sacred code. With 3 part-time jobs, waitress, morning barista, and weekend babysitter, Alana had never set foot in a world like this. She painted at night, slept in a low-ceiling basement apartment with a leaking AC and streetlight pouring through the only window. Her world smelled of oil paint, unpaid bills, and hope folded into leftover pizza boxes. Yet here she stood, surrounded by things polished, pristine, and deceitful. "Excuse me." A deep voice came from behind, smooth like aged whiskey and edged with glass. "This painting, did you make it?" Alana turned and instantly wished she hadn't. The man standing before her was breathtaking, in the literal sense. He was too handsome to be real, as if he'd just stepped out of a GQ cover shoot, but somehow retained a clumsy sincerity, something no stylist could teach. Chestnut hair gently swept back, square jaw, and eyes as dark blue as the deepest sea. Someone whispered behind her, "Graham Whitmore. That's him, the infamous heir." She didn't know how to respond. His face struck down every defense she had carefully built to survive this place. Yes, I painted it," she stammered, her hand instinctively smoothing the hem of her dress. Graham leaned in toward the painting. It was an abstract scene. A woman sitting alone on a rooftop in a storm, light from inside casting across her undefined face. The strokes were rough, full of gray, moss green, and charred violet emotion, both suppressed and explosive, bled from the canvas. "My God," Graham whispered, "I've never seen loneliness portrayed so clearly. This isn't a painting, this is a wound that speaks." Alana blushed. "Most people just ask if it matches their living room walls. Then they don't deserve it." He turned to her, meeting her eyes for the first time. "You've lived in that storm. I can feel it." A pause. No more music. No more laughter. Just 2 people, one imprisoned in an expensive tuxedo, the other wielding a brush to survive, standing across from each other, surrounded by masks and name tags. "He was right," Graham murmured. "Who?" "The man who once told me. If I could still feel something real, it wouldn't be emotion, it would be art. Alana had never imagined speaking more than 5 words to someone like Graham Whitmore. But over the next 20 minutes, they talked about paintings, about her mother, lost to breast cancer, about her small room in Decatur, where she grew up, and about the fear of losing yourself and trying to fit into a world never made for you. As the night waned, Graham didn't ask for her number. He asked for something bolder. Where are you working tomorrow? Evening shift, an Italian place called Palermo, on River Street. Then tomorrow, I'm having dinner at Palermo. You don't have to. I'm not going for the pasta. I'm going for you. Because I can't lose the first real thing I've felt in 10 years. She didn't believe he'd come, but he did. And that was the beginning of a war between love and legacy, between art and asset, between a woman who once believed she was invisible and a family willing to erase her name from the family tree. And that was how destiny began to crack open on a gala night where no one ever expected someone like her to lift her head. Palermo was a cozy Italian restaurant tucked away at the far end of River Street, where warm golden lights streamed through fogged glass and reflected on the worn-out tiles like memories still alive. That night, Graham showed up right on time. No bodyguards, no chauffeur, no attempt to blend into the crowd. He simply sat at table 12, by the window, where he could glimpse Alana every time she stepped out of the kitchen to serve. He ordered a plate of lasagna, but barely touched it the entire night. And Alana stepped out with a tray of wine, eyes wide, her stride so clumsy she spilled ice water onto her shoes. She wasn't the kind of woman who fell easily. She'd lived through enough judgment to build herself a hardened shell. But no one had ever looked at her the way Graham did, like she was the last song in a forgotten melody he suddenly remembered how to play. From that night on, Graham came to Palermo every evening. When Alana worked, he was there. When she was off, he ordered takeout and waited on the sidewalk to see her wave goodbye to guests. He didn't bring gifts. He didn't flaunt luxury cars or send flowers through the kitchen. He just sat there, reading a book he never seemed to get past the first page, waiting for those brief moments when he could see her smile. "I've never loved anyone before I met you," he said one frigid night in late January, a rare cold spell in Savannah. "Not because I didn't want to, but because I never had the chance to be honest with myself. And you make the lies unbearable." Alana didn't answer, but for the first time, she started wearing mascara before going to work. Their love didn't bloom with spectacle. It wasn't printed on magazine covers. No paparazzi lurked in the shadows. But it took root in each glance, each private smile, each stolen moment when Graham pretended to ask for more water. Until one late spring evening, Graham said, "I need to take you somewhere." They went to New Orleans, the city of chaos and poetry. There, among off-key saxophones on Bourbon Street, the sweet scent of beignets from Café du Monde, and humid winds blowing in from the Mississippi, Graham rented a room on the top floor of the Pontchartrain Hotel, with a balcony overlooking the city by night. Alana leaned against the railing, her lengthy hair tousled by the breeze, holding a glass of cheap red wine they'd bought from a corner store. "Why New Orleans?" she asked, eyes gazing into the distance, where jazz seemed shattering into the dark. "Because this was the only place my mother once said she felt truly herself. Before she became Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore, she was a ballet dancer, with a dream to dance freely on street stages." Alana turned. "You've never talked about your mother." "Because she forgot that version of herself long ago," Graham replied. "And I don't want to forget the girl you are before the world forces you to live by its rules." She didn't get to respond, because by then, he had already knelt no flowers, music, or candlelight. Just him, her, and a small ring set in a band carved with the shape of a paintbrush. "I don't have a poetic proposal," Graham said. "I only have one truth. If the world builds walls to keep me from you, I'll burn them down. You're not just the woman I love, Alana. You are proof I still have a heart. You are the map that leads me home." Alana looked at him, and strangely she didn't cry. She laughed. A full, unrestrained laugh for the first time since her father died, since her mother passed away, and since the world made her paint under the flicker of a boarding house window. She nodded. She didn't say yes. No need for pretty words, just a nod firm, fearless, and absolute. Like the way a woman chooses not to be someone's muse, but instead, the equal companion of her own love story. The news of their engagement, once leaked, sent Southern society into chaos. Whitmore Heir proposes to waitress, one tabloid screamed. A slap in the face to Savannah's upper crust, another wrote. Eleanor Whitmore, the woman who had breakfast with the mayor and golfed with the governor's wife, called an emergency family meeting. She labeled Alana as a degradation of bloodline, a national embarrassment in the making, and a Category 4 image crisis. Graham answered, "If you call love a crisis, let me show you what a revolution looks like." As for Alana, she said nothing. Until they returned to Savannah, she stepped out of the car, walked straight into her studio, and locked the door, and began to paint the first piece in what would become her legendary series, Women Who Do Not Bow. The first painting, a woman standing before an ornate iron gate, dress splattered in paint, hammer in hand. She didn't want to walk through the gate. She wanted to break it down. At the top of a small hill in Napa Valley, where vineyards stretched endlessly toward the horizon, where morning fog kissed every lavender petal lining the stone steps, their home rose like a poem made of wood, glass, and light. Not a classic Whitmore estate. No white marble columns. No gold-trimmed spiral staircases or cherub bas-reliefs. Their new home was a blend of warmth and modernity sketched by Graham himself, while Alana chose the paint colors, materials, lighting, ceiling height for the art room, and even the hinges of the studio's windows. "I'm not building a mansion," Graham said, holding the blueprints. "I'm building the world you'll call home." The art studio was placed on the north side, where the light was soft and stable, with floor-to-ceiling sliding glass doors that opened to a garden blooming with wildflowers. White daisies, lavender, and purple asters. A small walnut-paneled reading room was designed for Graham, a place to retreat from board meetings without disrupting Alana's unfinished canvases. During their first week living there, they painted their names on the brick wall of the kitchen in black paint. Graham and Alana. We start here. A year after their intimate vineyard wedding, no high society guests, no Whitmore relatives, Alana found out she was pregnant. It was a morning in April. She had just finished brewing mint tea, and acrylic paint was still on her fingers. Sitting on a wooden chair on the porch, reading a poem by Rilke, she felt something in her body shift. She didn't need a test. Her heart already knew. When Graham got the news, he didn't say a word. He simply walked over, knelt, and pressed his cheek to her belly, whispering, "Hello, little one, it's Dad." Their first child, Caleb Jude Whitmore, was born on a golden autumn day. He had eyes like a post-storm ocean, and from the moment he arrived, his tiny hand wrapped tightly around Alana's finger, as if unwilling to let go for even a second. The first 3 years of their life together were a gentle symphony, not perfect, but sincere. Alana painted in the quiet of early mornings, while Caleb played in the crib in the middle of her studio. In the evenings, Graham read by the fireplace while Alana made hot chocolate and curled into his arms, her hands still stained with color. Graham became a faithful husband, cleaning the kitchen when Alana spilled paint on the dinner table, brewing her coffee every morning, and always stepping into her studio barefoot so as not to scratch the beloved wooden floors. As for Alana, she cooked using made-up recipes, knitted scarves with yarn from the farmer's market, and left notes inside Graham's lunchbox. "If the meeting gets boring, remember I love you more than that stack of shares." Signed with a crooked little heart. When Caleb was nearly 2, Alana got pregnant again. Graham cried like a child right there in the doctor's office, not because of the baby, but because of Alana's gaze, warm like a lantern in winter. Their second son was named Micah Elliott Whitmore, born on a foggy morning, with dew still clinging to the vineyard, and the studio desk lamp still glowing from the night before. Micah became the laughter of the house, while Caleb was solemn, preferring to read or scribble beside his mother. Micah giggled whenever Graham pretended to be a dinosaur, or when Alana mixed messy paints for him to play with. The house began to change from a home into an utterly alive territory. On Caleb's 4th birthday, Graham took him up the hill to bury a small wooden box. Inside were letters written for each stage of Caleb's life, a photo album of Alana painting, and the very first note Alana had written to Graham after they met. "Don't come for the pasta. I don't have enough food for you. But if you've come honestly, I've saved you a place. You'll dig this up when you turn 18, Graham told him. Like a treasure, Daddy? No, like proof of where you come from. But the most beautiful things are often the most fragile. One morning, Alana woke to find Graham sitting silently in the living room, holding a handwritten letter that had been buried deep in the safe for years. A letter from Eleanor Whitmore. "If you wish to preserve the Whitmore honor, come back. We're losing our voice on the board. A wife without roots won't help you lead a legacy. Think about Caleb and the next child. The family needs you." Alana stood behind him. She said nothing. She didn't need to. She understood. Even if Graham didn't intend to leave, some words from blood still carried dangerous weight. And from that moment, she began naming the storm that was coming, not with words, but with every brush stroke on the unfinished painting, where a woman stood before a house on a hill. This time, without a hammer, she only held her child, and silently prepared for the day when that house might no longer be called home. On a September morning, Napa still smelled of wildflowers, but the wind had turned dry and brittle. Graham set his espresso cup down, pulled open the living room window, and said something that sent a chill through Alana's spine. Despite the outside temperature still lingering at 72 degrees Fahrenheit, "Avery's coming to stay for a few weeks." Alana turned, her palms reflexively curling inward. "Avery? Whitmore? Yeah. My cousin. Her parents divorced, and she says she needs a break from New York. She enrolled in a grad program at Stanford Art History, so this is convenient." Alana set her brush down. "A few weeks? Something like that. Don't worry. She's family. And maybe she needs a bit of home." A bit of home. That sentence cracked something in Alana's chest. She had grown used to a world with clear boundaries where peace was measured by the kids' nap schedules, where Graham came home at noon for the sandwiches she made, where evenings meant him standing silently behind her in the studio, watching her paint like part of a quiet ritual. She was used to his bare feet entering the studio, the soft clink of the oven door, the warm yellow light of the kitchen. There was no room in that world for sharp red heels to step in like fate's cruel joke. Avery Whitmore arrived on Saturday morning. She stepped out of a privately rented sedan, no rideshare. She was allergic to rear-view mirror perfumes, she claimed. She didn't carry her own luggage, the driver did. She wore a full-length cream trench coat, platinum waves cascading effortlessly, Celine sunglasses tucked into her cashmere turtleneck. A soft cloud of diptyque perfume wafted through the air as the car door opened. Alana held her child in her arms, standing at the threshold, and from that very first glance, she knew the storm had made landfall. "Sister-in-law," Avery beamed, her smile as perfect as if rehearsed in the mirror. "I've heard so much about you." "Really?" Alana said quietly. "Funny. I've heard nothing about you unless you count that scandal in the Observer 2 years ago." Avery laughed like a breeze. "Oh, media games. You know how it island. But I'm hoping to stay here for a while, calm surroundings. After everything, I need to reset." Alana knew it too well. Predators always arrive claiming they're here to heal. In the first 3 weeks, Avery was like a living magazine cutout inside what used to be their warm home. She was always just happening to be around when Alana was busy with Micah, offering to walk Caleb in the garden. She accidentally stepped into Alana's studio and said, "Your paintings have this rawness, but it'd be stronger if you explored more Eastern European surrealism." She spoke with Graham for hours about investment projects that Alana was never invited to. She even took over the small home office for her first semester Zoom calls with Stanford professors. Alana once glimpsed the screen, revealing a FaceTime with someone clearly intimate. Dinner routines began to shift. Graham stopped eating Alana's cooking. Avery began ordering from fine dining restaurants for a more urban palate. The living room rug was replaced. To reduce Caleb's dust allergy, Avery explained, several of Alana's paintings were swapped out for minimalist art prints. "Better match with the lighting," Avery said. The house, that sacred space built from dreams and dried paint, was slowly turning into a silent gallery where Alana was no longer the creative goddess, but just a wife learning to share space. Worse still, Graham didn't seem to notice. Or worse, he accepted it. Work's been stressful. Avery's just trying to help. Don't be so sensitive. You're pregnant, after all. Yes, Alana was pregnant again. A girl, Lily. But unlike the first two pregnancies, this child wasn't welcomed with nursery murals or whispered good mornings into her belly. Instead, there was the sound of Avery's manicured nails, tapping wine glasses, and accidental laughter echoing through the halls during Alana's loneliest hours. One night, Alana opened the living room door and saw Avery lounging in the leather chair. Graham was standing behind her, reading the same financial report. Neither of them noticed Alana's presence. She stood there, hand resting on her stomach, where the small life inside kicked gently, as if saying, "Mama, I'm here." And at that moment, Alana knew. The storm had taken the house, not through thunder or lightning, but through charming smiles, through "Do you need any help?" through strategic politeness and calculated sweetness. Avery didn't steal Graham in one night. She quietly dismantled brick by brick, until the house could no longer hold, and Alana, though still sleeping in the bed they once called ours, had slowly been turned into a guest in her own life. On the 251st day of pregnancy, Alana stood in front of the bedroom mirror, staring at her belly reflected through the foggy glass. Her painting Mother in Bloom used to hang on the same wall, but it has now been taken down so Avery could redesign the interior for cohesion. She wore an old sweater and light grey cotton pants. Her hair was tied halfway up, a few strands loose from restless nights. Her face had dulled, with none of the usual blush after painting. She looked like a faded version of herself, and Graham hadn't noticed. The final week before her due date, he'd moved into the office to sleep. "So you can rest more peacefully," he said. But Alana knew how he looked at Avery, made it inconvenient for him to return to their shared bed. The morning Lily chose to enter the world was a cold Monday, colder than most winters in Napa, with fog thick enough to curtain the trees. At 3:42 a.m., Alana's water broke. She shot upright, a searing pain radiating from her back to her abdomen, like her body was being clenched by an invisible hand. Graham wasn't beside her. She didn't call. She didn't scream. She picked up her phone and ordered an Uber. Every movement was a knife. The driver, an older man named Richard, helped her into the car, his hands trembling, but his eyes filled with kindness. "Is anyone coming with you?" "No," she panted. "Just me. And my daughter." Alana arrived at Street Helena Hospital at 4:17 a.m., entirely alone. She signed the admission papers with her left hand, the right gripping the chair rail to suppress every scream. When the doctor announced, "Your cervix is dilating fast," a nurse rushed her into the emergency delivery room. And Graham didn't answer. Not the third call. Not the fourth. Alana let out a dry laugh between contractions that felt like fire. She remembered Graham once saying, "I'll hold your hand through every pain." That's what a husband does. Now her hand held nothing but the icy edge of the hospital bed. At 5:28 a.m., Lily Serafina Whitmore let out her first cry, eyes tightly shut, fists clenched, fierce like a declaration. "I will live, no matter what." Alana didn't cry. She stared at her daughter, tiny lips, warm red skin, soft curls, and a fragile gaze. An angel born into solitude. An Urser asked, "Where's your husband?" She answered, "He's busy." And in that very moment, her entire body understood. Not busy with work, busy building a life that no longer included her. Graham showed up that afternoon. He entered the room in a flurry, hair tousled, shirt half untucked. Avery wasn't with him, but the faint trace of her Le Labo perfume still clung to Graham's collar. "I'm sorry, emergency board meeting. I didn't think you'd go into labor this early." Alana held Lily in her arms, eyes never leaving her daughter. "I called you," she said. "Last night?" He scratched his head. "Phone died. Avery used my charger. And, well, you don't need to explain." Alana cut in, her voice barely above a breath. "You're not the person I call anymore." Graham looked at her, something cracked in his eyes, but not deep enough to break him. He stepped closer and gently touched Lily's cheek. "She looks like you." Alana turned away. "No, Graham. She looks like the woman who endured pain in silence, while the father was absent for convenient reasons." That night, As the hospital fell into a hush of monitors and soft nurse footsteps, Alana sat by the window, cradling Lily in her arms, humming a wordless melody composed silently in her mind. Each note a fracture, a wound, a vow. She thought of her mother, the woman who once taught her how to grip tightly when the world let go, and she whispered to Lily, "You are the most beautiful thing that has ever happened, in a place this dark, and I swear no one will erase you from this world, the way they once tried to erase me." 3 days later, Alana left the hospital. Graham wasn't there. He had another meeting. Back home, the front door, once unlocked by her fingerprint, no longer recognized her. Her access had been revoked remotely. She stood there, Lily in her arms, suitcase in hand, her 2 older sons beside her in the winter drizzle, in front of a door that no longer carried her name. Avery stepped out, loose silk robe draped casually, holding a glass of white wine, her gaze dripping with mock sympathy. "Oh, you're back? Didn't you get Graham's email? Given your condition after birth, his lawyers advised you should rest elsewhere for now." Alana said nothing. She turned to Caleb, 5 years old, holding little Micah's hand, and nodded. "We're leaving, babies. No shouting, no sobbing, no pleading. Just a mother, walking away from a house that once was home, now nothing more than a gate of betrayal." And in that heavy, heartbreaking stride, something shifted. Not love-breaking, but dignity rising. And it would be that dignity, not rage, that would become the engine for the life she would build again. Not to seek revenge, but to prove that a woman doesn't need to be kept in a castle when she can build an entire kingdom with her own hands. The rented car stopped in front of an old building deep within Jackson Street, East Oakland, once a post-war hub for black laborers, now a liminal space between memory and uncertainty. Alana stepped out, Lily wrapped in a blanket in her arms, and the 2 older children stood beside her under a thin rain that fell like ashes. The apartment had 3 bedrooms, 1 kitchen, and a ground floor. No carpet. The gas stove clicked stubbornly every time it was lit. But here, no one kicked them out. No one changed the rug without asking. No one reset the locks remotely. Here, she got to be herself. Not beautiful, not glamorous, but real. Alana called her old professor Mr. Whitaker, the man who once invited her to that gala night. He didn't say much, just sent her the address of a community gallery in Fruitvale. They need someone to teach painting to at-risk teens. Not great pay, but it has a key, Wi-Fi, and space for your easel. She accepted not for the money, but because it was the first place she could finally touch paint again. At night, she painted in exchange for eggs, milk, or a few lunch boxes for the kids. During the day, she built a classroom, taught children how to turn rage into art, how to use brushes instead of fists, how to sign their name in the corner of a canvas like a declaration. "I exist. I am part of this world." One day, a boy named Andre, 12 years old, fatherless, once arrested for stealing sneakers at Foot Locker, asked her, "Do you think people can turn into light after they've been burned?" Alana looked at him. "Not just light," she said. "They can become fire, lanterns, lightning if they know how to rise." That night, she painted a new piece, a woman holding 3 children, standing amid a crumbling city, her hair transforming into flaming waves that soared into the sky. She titled it, "The Mother from Ash." The press buzzed with rumors of the Whitmore separation due to lifestyle differences, Graham's legal team said. Avery was named Director of Visual Communications for the company, a brand new title no one understood, but one that placed her consistently on magazine covers. Graham stayed silent. No lawsuits, no apologies, no explanations, just a friendly resolution sent via lawyers, offering Alana a condo in San Mateo and tuition payments for all 3 children. Alana declined. She returned all the documents with a handwritten note. "I don't need pity. I need respect, something you chose to abandon." One afternoon, an older black woman walked into the room as she was teaching. She wore a Ghanaian patterned shawl, held a canvas tote bag, and smiled with the calm of someone who had weathered 1,000 storms. "I'm Naomi Harper, co-founder of Women Who Rise. We've been watching you." Alana frowned. "I didn't know I was being watched." Naomi placed a folder on the table. Photos of Alana's paintings hanging at the gallery, clips of speeches she gave to the kids. An excerpt from a letter she once wrote to a 16-year-old girl, forced to drop her art class because she got pregnant. "We want you to lead our new initiative, Mothers Who Build. A space for single mothers, survivors, women who've been discarded, to rebuild their lives through art. We've got a studio, a budget, and trust." Alana sat in silence, and for the first time in months, she cried. Not from pain, but because someone had seen her, not as a scar, but as a seed. That night, after the children were asleep, Alana stood alone in her makeshift studio. Walls still unpainted, light bulb hanging from a coat hanger. She placed a half-finished canvas on the easel. The woman in the painting now stood on a rooftop, no longer holding children, but lifting a flaming brush high into the air. Behind her, hundreds of silhouettes. Mothers, sisters, wives, once forgotten, now stepping out from the shadows. Alana wrote the title at the bottom, Phoenix Street. And right there in a room no one knew, with no investor, no spotlight, a movement was ignited. Not by wealth, not by power, but by color, by silence once forced, now turned into a language of defiance, by a woman who had been cast out of her own home. Now, she is building a new world, for hundreds like her. 6 months later, the name Phoenix Street Studio had become a quiet but powerful whisper across the alleys of Oakland, Richmond, East LA, and even New Orleans. It wasn't a place people came to learn to paint. It was where women once crushed by the world came to remember their names. There was a 9-year-old girl who had been expelled for getting pregnant, now leading the social media art team. A 2-year-old mother recently escaped from a shelter, now teaching therapeutic embroidery. Some immigrant women didn't speak English, yet used oil paint to retell their journeys crossing the ocean. Alana wasn't just building a center. She was rebuilding history through those who had once been discarded. Every Saturday, they hosted a small exhibition called Wall of Honor, a large wall divided into portrait frames, each one featuring a woman who had chosen to rise from pain. They didn't want titles. They just wanted to be seen. In the first week, Alana hung her own photo. No makeup, no editing. Just a moment. She's holding Lily, standing beneath a tree outside their old rental home, eyes looking straight at the lens, saying, "This is me. I was cast out of the kingdom I built, but I will not die in silence." The following week, more photos appeared, and a reporter from The Atlantic happened to walk by, snapped a shot of the wall, and wrote a piece titled, "Where Forgotten Women Begin Again." The article spread like wildfire. Within a week, Phoenix Street received over 800 emails, not asking for sponsorship, but asking to be part of it. Someone from Alabama applied to volunteer. A sociology student at Harvard was asked to intern. A small publishing house in Vermont offered to write a book about Alana's journey. And her response? Just one email, written after a sleepless night, sent to Naomi Harper, the woman who had believed in her from the very beginning. "We don't need sponsors. We need revolutionaries." One late afternoon in May, an older woman walked in while Alana was wiping down desks after class. She wore a crisp white blouse, thin frame glasses, and worn leather shoes that had clearly traveled many streets. She stood in front of the Wall of Honor for a long while and quietly began to weep. Alana walked over. "Is there something I can help you with, Mom?" The woman turned, eyes red. "I'm Clara Whitmore, Graham's mother." Alana froze. "I'm sorry for the intrusion, but I needed to see what my family chose to throw away." Clara reached into her bag and pulled out a photograph. A candid shot of Graham capturing Alana holding Caleb in the studio, back when they had just moved to Napa. She was crouched down, shirt stained with paint, hair tied up carelessly, eyes full of tenderness. "I kept this, hid it. I knew that if I spoke up, Avery would destroy it. But I can't stay silent anymore. Graham, he's lost himself. And my son, he once had a legacy worth fighting for. A mother like you." Clara didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't justify anything. She left behind a thick envelope, not with money, but with internal corporate files from the Whitmore Group, falsified reports, concealed shareholder agreements, screenshots of messages between Avery and the legal advisor, plotting how to remove Alana's custody rights legally. I believe maybe you should fight with the truth instead of just pain. That evening, Alana closed the studio early. She returned home, laid Lily gently in her crib, and watched Caleb and Micah reading side by side. She sat at the kitchen table, opened her laptop, and created a new folder titled Custody Revival, Reclaiming What's Mine. And for the first time since she left that house in Napa, she was no longer the victim. She was the plaintiff, the warrior, the mother who never fell. June 14th, at the Napa County Family Court, the custody hearing between Alana Whitmore and Graham Whitmore officially began. The media was barred from the courtroom, but news was never one to respect boundaries. They called it the battle between the fallen and the one rising. Some bet Alana would cry, collapse, or settle because she's just a poor artist. But when Alana walked into the courtroom, Caleb holding her hand, Micah and Lily behind her, Professor Naomi Harper beside her, the entire room fell silent. She wore no designer labels, no elaborate makeup, just a navy blue modest dress, a scarf printed with Caleb's crayon drawings, and a gaze. The gaze of a woman who didn't want pity, only to be heard. Graham was represented by Hollister and Vale, a firm known for high-net-worth divorces. Their indirect indictment was clear. Alana had no stable income, no property in her name, no long-term health coverage for 3 children, and most notably, she chose to leave the home, leaving the children in emotional distress. Graham's opening statement, "I never drove her out. She left. I only tried to maintain stability for the kids." Alana's lawyer, Miss Sloane Redford, was a black civil attorney known for winning a 2021 custody case on behalf of a homeless mother. She stood and calmly asked, "Then why was the home's security system changed? Why was Alana's fingerprint deleted from the access registry? Why were only Mr. Whitmore and Miss Avery Whitmore granted entry?" There was no clear answer. Graham deflected. His eyes shifted, especially when he saw Caleb sitting silently in the corner, not running to embrace his father. Alana was asked to speak. She didn't read a statement. She didn't bring a script. She told a story. She told of giving birth alone, of taking an Uber at 3 a.m. while in labor, of nights spent cradling a feverish Lily through freezing Oakland winters, of how she taught Caleb math using bottle caps and taught Micah to form words through paintings. She didn't speak to draw tears. She spoke to lay living evidence before the court that assets do not measure a mother, but by presence. "I don't have a mansion, but I have my arms. I don't have a nanny, but I nurse my babies every night. I don't have a PR team, but I run a classroom where 17 children call me their reason to stay in school." The courtroom was still, only the voice of a mother, reclaiming the voice that had been stolen. On the second day, Miss Redford presented the internal files that Clara Graham's mother had delivered. Inside, emails between Avery and the legal team planning to exclude Alana from shared assets. Messages between Avery and an HR advisor imply plans to fabricate a psychological profile to discredit Alana's custody rights. A company memo confirming that Avery had withdrawn funds from a Whitmore account under Alana's name without proper authorization. The judge looked at Graham. "Were you aware of these actions?" Graham lowered his head. I trusted Avery, and I never checked." On the day of the verdict, heavy rain poured, but inside the courtroom, it was brighter than ever. The judge struck the gavel. "The court awards primary custody to Mrs. Alana Whitmore. Mr. Graham Whitmore will retain supervised visitation. All education and health-related assets for the 3 children will be transferred to joint management under the mother. The Napa estate will be subject to a full legal audit on asset division." Graham sank into his seat, not because he lost, but because he realized he had lost the one thing money could never buy back: trust. As for Alana, she walked over and embraced her 3 children. No triumph, no pride, just silence, the kind of silence a mother earns after a long war. That night, at Phoenix Street Studio, a new painting was hung. A mother stands inside a courtroom, not shouting, not raising her hand, just standing tall, wearing a smoky gray coat, 3 children holding hands behind her. The title beneath, "We Were Kept." 3 weeks after the historic trial, Phoenix Street studio welcomed a special visitor, the mayor of Oakland. He didn't bring the press, no cameras, no PR team, just a handwritten letter and one simple sentence: "I'm not here for politics. I'm here because my mother was once a woman like you. And if she were alive, she'd want to hug you." That week, Alana was invited to join the city's Commission on Culture and Community Recovery. The proposal: to lead Rise from Dust, a citywide initiative to transform 10 abandoned properties in underserved neighborhoods into public art studios, especially for single mothers and at-risk youth. Alana declined the role of executive director, but she accepted the offer to serve as creative and spiritual advisor because she knew fire doesn't spread when controlled. It spreads when it's fed by freedom. A major New York magazine, Modern Voices, featured her on its cover. The woman thrown out by Napa's elite is redefining what it means to be reborn. The article didn't just mention the trial, it recounted every classroom at Phoenix Street, every canvas with fingerprints from homeless children, and how Alana refused a single dollar from Graham, even though she could have won a sizable settlement. She said in the interview, "I didn't come here to reclaim the title of wife. I came to prove that mother is a title no one has the right to take away." And then, one afternoon, as Alana guided a 4-year-old girl to paint her first memory room, the studio door creaked open. Clara Whitmore entered again, but this time, she wasn't alone. Beside her was Graham. He looked thinner, no tie, no blazer. Empty hands, no flowers, no apologies wrapped in gifts. Only a softened gaze, tired, broken, but also, quietly, more real. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness," Graham said. "I'm here to return something." Alana stood still, chalk dust still on her fingers. "Return what?" Graham pulled a small wooden box from his coat pocket, the kind used to hold a ring. But inside, there was no jewel. Just a piece of yellowed, folded paper, slightly curled with time. "This is the note you gave me the very first time. If you've come with honesty, then I've saved you a place. I was never worthy of keeping it." Alana took it, unfolded it. The ink had faded slightly over the years, but the words were still there, like the silent nod she once gave on that New Orleans balcony. She didn't speak. She just nodded, not as forgiveness, not as acceptance, but as recognition that he had finally learned how to bow his head. Clara stepped forward and took her hand. "You are the mother my family needed, but didn't know how to honor. You don't need the Whitmore name anymore. But if one day Lily grows up and asks where she comes from, please tell her her grandmother once knelt. In gratitude." Alana cried, not for Graham, not for Clara, but because at long last, after being erased from every record, she was acknowledged through the one thing no one can forge: remorse. That night, at the Women Who Rebuilt exhibition, a new painting was unveiled. A woman stands at the center of a bridge, arching over a river, glowing red like molten steel. Behind her, the shadows of those who once hurt her, heads bowed at the bank, not asking to cross, just watching. In front of her, children, mothers, and young girls are waiting to be led forward. The title of the painting, "Bridge of Fire, the bridge built from ash." Not a bridge to return, but a bridge to guide those once forgotten into a new era. 12 months after the final gavel fell in court, Phoenix Street Studio was no longer just a local art space. It had become a movement, a symbol, an ecosystem of recovery for women erased by prejudice, violence, and systems that stripped them of their rightful lives. From a once rented home, Phoenix Street now had 4 branches in California, 1 in New York, and was in talks to expand into Atlanta, Detroit, and even the Navajo Nation. All of it is run by people once labeled beyond repair. Former victims became directors. Former inmates became art teachers. Former homeless single mothers became financial officers. No one asked, who were they? They only asked, what are they building today? Alana no longer appeared in the media. She turned down every TED Talk, every book signing, every morning show invitation. She told Naomi Harper, "I don't need to be a role model. I need to keep the door open for whoever comes next." Naomi smiled and replied, "You don't have to hold the door anymore, Alana. You built the whole damn building." One early autumn afternoon, Lily, now nearly 3, ran joyfully through their largest Oakland studio. Caleb held a camera, capturing candid shots of his mother from afar. Micah sat at a piano with a volunteer instructor, learning his first melody. Alana stood in front of a blank canvas. For the first time in 3 years, she wasn't painting for others, not painting for therapy, not painting in protest. She painted because the silence had finally healed. The painting was a vision. A woman's hand, no wedding ring, but steady, reached down to hold a young girl's hand standing atop ashes. Behind them, a city rose, no golden towers, just rooftops aglow with light, where every room was a chapter still being written. She titled the painting, "We're Still Here." She hung it on the wall of honor, unframed, unprotected, a quiet declaration to every woman ever cast aside. You don't have to come back as who you were. You can return as something this world never dared to imagine. That evening, at the Phoenix Street second anniversary exhibition, an 1-year-old girl, once a survivor of domestic abuse, took the stage and said, "Miss Alana taught me that no one was born to live like a ruin. We can be the blueprint for a better world." The room stood. No one cried. Tears were no longer the only proof of pain. Now, they had action. They had community. They had memory, etched in color, in wood, in voice. Alana stepped back from the stage, into the shadows. Lily is asleep on her shoulder, her hand resting over her daughter's back. She smiled, not for victory, not for recognition, but because she was still standing, whole, bold, and unbowed, as if she had never been broken. The end. A story of rebirth, dignity, and of women who never truly disappear.